I'm going to edit this part because I spaced out there for a second.
Well, you're entitled. we can add that into the acting. What is spacing
That was a real
out?
moment right there, wasn't it?
But I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm used to people spacing out.
Okay.
And then the spacing out. Look, we can get into a whole conversation about, Carl Jung's thing. Spacing out is creative. It's really where your thoughts go and connections you're making. Right?
Mm-hmm.
All of those things are great. People spacing out, people getting bored, people being confused. That's all like high learning curve stuff.
Are you curious about discovering ways of making your life better? Then welcome to my podcast. I'm Bob Nickman, and this is The Exploding Human. Listen in while I talk with all kinds of people in the fields of personal growth, health and healing, alternative therapies, psychology, spirituality, environment, and the future. I'm looking for those answers that make life better for everyone. You'll meet cutting-edge practitioners, doctors, artists, filmmakers, business people, and those who have overcome challenges. The brave, the curious, anyone who is out there helping us humans to explore, expand, and explode.
That was ELAINE Williams that you just heard. And I'm going to be talking to her about her work as a teacher of the Meisner acting technique. But this isn't really about acting. This is about the power of that work and how her students and herself tap into intuition and growth, stretching as a human being, and all the wonderful benefits of the idea of getting out of your own way and the freedom that comes with play. That's all going to happen here on this interview with ELAINE Williams. Here she is.
I'm never leaving here.
Isn't it nice?
This is my brand new home.
Right?
Are you kidding?
We have a study room with a window out to seeing people actually studying.
Look, if I can smuggle food in, I'm just going to live here.
They don't like the food, but...
That's why I use the word smuggle. I'm a bit of a rebel.
Yeah. All you need is a big purse. That's all you need.
Well, we won't tell any tales.
Yeah, that's
I got
right.
that.
So anytime you want to come here, it's... I rent this place and I can meet people, and I'm so glad I'm meeting you.
Look, I'm in an interview already. I want to be your co-host.
Well, maybe we can figure something out. I don't know.
There it is.
I like co-hosts.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, why? I've done that a couple of times. It's fun.
Okay, perfect.
Let's talk. We're going to talk acting, but not in terms of Hollywood success and narcissism and those types of things, but the essence of what it is and what it does for people. Because now I also... as I told you before, had studied some of the a couple of years of Meisner Technique, which is what you teach.
Absolutely.
And the best way I heard it described, and maybe it was him that described it, was what it's about is living truthfully under imaginary circumstances.
That's it. That's our definition, straight up.
Straight up. And so what does that really mean if somebody comes to you and they want to be an actor? And
first of all,
because some people come for the wrong reasons. I want everyone to look at me, and I want to be famous, and I want to be, and I'm really good looking.
hey, if you're lucky enough to be good looking at my young age, I'm like, use it for all you got while it lasts, until that face turns into the deep beauty that ours have.
My beauty is deep.
The deep richness that is us. Until that time, use it or lose it. At first I think I would have said the same thing. Like, look, all of this fame, this business, this crapola, this da-da-da-da-da, maybe those are the wrong reasons to come into it. You got to come into it for the art and the stretching and the learning and the service and the But I think I've come around now to come into it for whatever brings you in, because that's where the transformation is. Maybe you do want to be famous. Maybe you do crave that. Maybe you do want this elevated, almost ridiculous fantasy of a certain level of influence. But if it brings you in and then it hooks you in to something that's a deeper truth, something that's a different service, something that matures you, something that in your lightness or your humor or your comedy, you can give.
That's what I found happened for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a stand-up, and I came into acting classes to, be better, so maybe I could get
you get a show.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I always wanted to be a second banana or third. That interested me more than trying to.
I just
anything.
like to be a banana anywhere you can. just put me in anywhere,
Right?
Because I just love it,
Yeah.
and I think I selfishly love watching other talented, imaginative folk find that love, no matter where they came into it, because I don't know what the right reason is, and who am I to judge? I want everybody to tell their story and tell it truthfully and tell it from them. So that means, in some weird Game of Thrones way, everything you do leads to who you become as a performer. And you're going to not know who that is. And it continues for your whole freaking life. What a tremendous, crazy blessing. We can work forever and drop dead on stage. Dancers, athletes. I mean, so many people in their heydays have a shelf life.
Yes.
We get to continue to grow because it's a human art form. So you have to continue to grow, whether you want to or not.
And I would imagine, just like anything else, as you get older, you get more seasoned, and you're probably doing even less.
Oh yeah,
on stage,
because you can't do any more at that point.
But I mean, what I'm saying is, in the more is less kind of
I think
a way that great art is. That I think that when you watch somebody in any art form, music or acting, or they've got a lot of stuff in their hip pocket, and they're not pulling it out unless they absolutely need it.
They're efficient. And sublime, and probably the biggest thing, relaxed. You see an athlete who plays soccer, football, tennis, whatever, from 3 or 4, a ballerina, a ballet dancer. They're relaxed because they've been doing it for so long. So many artists who are 50, 60, 90 as actors will say, it took me 40 years to get to the point where I didn't have to think. And that's when everything began. That's when the exploration really began. So it's craft and work. And I think that's the part that sometimes scares people off.
I just equate all the art to all art is sort of the same process.
Yeah.
Where you get to that point where you're having an experience.
Yeah.
And it's having you.
Yes.
And
I like that.
Yeah.
I like that.
So you're not even aware of an audience, of where this is going. It's just you're having an experience. And one of the people I studied with said, I thought this was great. He goes, you get to experience all of life without any consequences.
That's
who
what
wouldn't
I
want to
love.
do that,
man. And you get to experience what you would be in that life if you let yourself. That's the difficulty. Is can you allow yourself to play in a childlike form, unrestrained? My mother used this word, that children aren't dampened. There's something so pure and free about their impulsivity. And so you're trying to get that as a performer. And of course that takes a lot to get out of your head, to get out of the mind, to get out of the monkey brain, to get out of get out of the way. And all of the work that it takes to get so conditioned that you can, as my great bosses Joanne and DW say, you can be conscious where you need to be and unconscious where you need to be and play. I mean, there's still the beauty of it is it's play if you can let it be. Mm-hmm. What did Meisner say? It's like, don't let that get around, that it can be fun. Don't tell anybody. But then it has so much of the rigor and the discipline to get to the freedom of the fun. But it's there in every step.
That's really nice. Don't let that get out.
I know it, right? I know it, right? But I think people would have to come into it from a point of view there of experience, not of result, fame, gimme. That's a different space altogether.
Have you found, now you've been teaching for how long? More than a year?
I'm so young. Gosh, I think it is
This is going somewhere, by the way.
I think I'm on 21 or 22 years of teaching now.
So you started in the 80s, 90s.
In the 90s.
90s,
yeah.
Okay. So since the 90s, have you noticed a change in the students? Because I'm assuming most of the students are younger. Most, right?
Probably in a higher percentage. But then we get probably from our youngest folks are probably 17. So up into that 17 to 30 is probably our highest percentage. And then 30 to 40 next. But you get 50 and 60 and 70-year-olds who are in there trucking and sometimes find a tremendous experience because they're bringing so much to the party.
Have people changed because of the society changing emotionally, mature-wise, work ethic-wise? I'm just curious. I was asking our mutual friend Mark about that.
Yeah.
Because it goes, ask Elaine. I don't know.
Yeah. It's funny. People always cite the percentage of success in our industry, almost in a negative light. Like, heck, how can you make a living if it's 3% of the people working and only 1% of those folks are really, and on and on and on and on. So I even get a lot of friends who will say, really, are these students serious? Are people really trying to do something, or are they looking for a quick fix? Because in their success, they were used to being dancers, singers, actors, breaking their buns, working 10 hours a day in classes and in training and hustling and doing everything else. So there's a nostalgia, which is part of a big reality of how serious people are about training. And then so they'll say, come on, can these people even put their phone down for a second in the younger generation? And I think in the younger and older generation, that's an issue. And we are now, it's new to me, because the idea that we're so tethered to our phones that it's like a Pavlovian tap that screen that I'm a huge part of, and trying to get people to sit and be present and be intimate. When you can fire people by an email or a text, when people break up over an email or a text, when parents are saying that their younger high school kids get anxious on phone calls or never leave the house, or don't feel like, they're tied to their video games. So I think concentration and focus with these younger kids can be new and tough, but you just have to take all that stuff away and get refocused. But what's the same is, once focused, people still, I think, are having a similar experience. They're still going through the same ride and journey and learning and craft building. So the people who make it still have a similar personality in their pursuit.
That's great. I'm happy to hear that. So it's just, it's interesting how this phone thing comes up in so many of my interviews.
Oh my gosh.
Everyone's talking about what damage it's doing. And I love, I'm guilty of all that stuff that you talked about. Yeah. It's really like
the worst.
Yeah.
So I think I pay even more attention, and still I'm trying to figure it out myself because I'm partial to it. But then there are other parts of it that are not helpful. And I think you can do both. So we just ask people to put their phones in a box and focus. And I think at first that seems like, what? And then eventually, like, what are you talking about, lady? But then eventually it kind of makes a more rich group experience when people give over to it. And sometimes I think they actually like it because it's an excuse. Somebody is saying, put that down. And so you don't feel a guilt or a fear of missing out, because in a way you're being challenged to try it.
Yeah.
But it's a trip.
I'm going to edit this part because I spaced out there for a second.
Well, you're entitled. we can add that into the acting. What is spacing out?
That was a real moment right there, wasn't it?
But I'm a teacher.
Yeah.
I'm used to people spacing out.
Okay.
And then the spacing out, look, we can get into a whole conversation about, Carl Jung's thing, spacing out is creative. It's really where your thoughts go and connections you're making, right? All of those things are great. People spacing out, people getting bored, people being confused. That's all like high learning curve stuff.
I think it is.
You're right in there.
I mean, I've had this my whole life where I'm talking to somebody, and I don't know how the thought comes in because I don't know how my brain works, but all of a sudden I'm like, this is really interesting what I'm thinking. And I go with it, and the other person's like, where are you?
That's Jung saying that those, he was a student of mine, hipped me to this, that he was saying, Elaine, Jung would say those side thoughts that kids have where teachers think they're spacing out are actually a great part of their creativity. So as an artist, you're going to space. Welcome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Congratulations.
Can you tell my wife that? 'Cause
okay, that's a different.
she's like,
that's a different.
I'm
podcast.
right here. Yeah, but my thoughts are more interesting than what you're talking about.
Okay, I'm not telling your wife anything until I tell you. Yeah. Never tell your wife that your thoughts are more interesting. This is your real problem.
Well, luckily she doesn't listen to this, so which is another beef.
This episode could do wonders for your marriage.
Yeah. She would probably think it's funny.
She would.
Because she already knows this stuff.
Of course.
I've discussed it with her at certain times.
At length.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I never say my thoughts are more interesting than what you're talking about. That's my sort of humorous take on it. But it is true.
We've gotten to the gist of it.
Yeah. Oh, man. So how did you get started in acting? I know you told me you were from, your mother was from Montgomery, Alabama.
Yes,
and you grew up in Indiana.
I did.
So you're in Los Angeles teaching acting. It's a long, circuitous route. Yeah.
I've been here for so long. It seems like so long, and it seems like yesterday. So my parents, I guess they met at Michigan State, where they went to college. My grandparents, my grandfather taught at Michigan University. So my mother ended up in Michigan. She went to Michigan State. She met my father. The two of them are of course, the most interesting people on the planet to me, the finest minds, the craziest artists, the greatest politicos, really kind of community organizers, Renaissance folk, all kind of good stuff. So that said, from little old Fort Wayne, Indiana, little mid-size city in Indiana.
Yep.
They were the firmly planted realists, right in the world of systems and making the world better. I was always floating somewhere, hovering above in the clouds, watching movies at 3 a.m. And I that's their fault too, because they took me to the movies at a young age and I was just, transformed. So I've always loved film. Stand-up, my other love in comedies, just stand-up's probably the scariest thing to do on the planet. But I just love the entertainment industry. I loved, film. I knew I was going to move to Los Angeles as soon as I knew there was a Los Angeles and a Hollywood. And so then after college, I moved out here and I had a chance to do a lot of fun stuff, a lot in production, worked for some fantastic people and fantastic mentors. So I got to see a lot of the industry. Then at a point, I finally was like, shouldn't I do an acting class here, something rigorous and fun? And I had a dear friend who recommended the Barron Brown Studio, Joanne Barron and D.W. Brown. And I studied there for 2 years after having done so many things in production that set me up beautifully. And I studied there. And then when I completed, they asked me to do the teacher's training program, which to me was like a master's and a PhD and continues to be. And then I look up and I don't know how, but 22 years later, here I am.
How is that different than taking the classes? I mean, I know kind of what the classes are like. It's kind of hard to describe it over a podcast, but
it is. The classes are like a vocational training program for actors, because Meisner, as my mentors describe him so often, had such a yeoman-like workmanship to craft. I mean, people would say, of course, listening is one of the key elements in acting, period. But Meisner also keyed on it in so many ways through the use of his improvisational exercises to help actors not lean on the dang on words. As Stella Adler is always saying, you gotta earn the words. People lean on the words and yet they mean nothing. So Meisner really, along with the shaping from Stanislavski and all his other influences and music, shaped this way to help actors really build from within all of the pieces of the puzzle of relationship and form and content, Just amazing stuff on his part. So the classes take you through this rigor. But acting and teaching are two different skills. I mean, it helps to be a solid craftsperson and great actor and imaginative. But then you've got to learn how to impart that same knowledge. And you've got to learn how to really run a room. So it's probably akin to the learning of how to direct, the learning of teaching is its own specific thing.
Yeah.
Had I known how rigorous it was, I never thought in my life I'd be a teacher. Never occurred to me. One time in the back of my classroom, in the 2 years of my studies, which I adored, I said, what an amazing thing it must be to shepherd these people through this artistic thing. And then I went, oh, well, that's good. Somebody will do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So one of these strong people will continue to carry the mantle. Never thought it would be me, even though I had so many teachers in my family.
That's right. You just said that. Yeah.
Isn't that nuts? The old unconscious getting you, and you have no clue what you've really been set up to do.
Let's say you see something in someone that's blocking them from getting to a certain emotion, or they're up in their head thinking. And what are the techniques that you would? I guess it depends on the person. Some people might need a gentler approach than others, and some people might need sort of a really strong, almost brutal sort of slap.
Push.
Not physical one, but
a whiplash. I watched Whiplash and went, yay, short of perhaps throwing that thing at that poor fella. But you could understand when you see potential in people, you do want to push them to open it up. And that's difficult because we're just human and you've got to grow in it. But that's what you learn when you're getting the training for teaching. You've got to know the craft so specifically. I mean, it's like really the teacher training program is like being an intern in medicine. You've got to watch and intuit and perform and be tested and learn every facet and that's a lifetime. It'll take me a lifetime. I'm just starting to figure it out, I think, in my 22 years. Mm-hmm. And so now I can start to really learn it and start to I hope, be even more effective. But it's spent watching somebody so senior and better than you, like anything. Like Daniel Day-Lewis spending a year for Phantom Thread, working underneath a designer or a tailor so he could learn the craft. That's how you got to learn to teach. Then you start to realize through Meisner's work, well, if you just put your attention on somebody else and listen, that may help somebody who's nervous, self-aware on stage. Just put your attention 1,000% on the other person. If you teach somebody how to use an activity, a task, have an objective, again, you're focusing their attention and you can unlock them in certain ways. If you teach people how to use their imagination, how to daydream, how to emotionalize, they may become more empathetic. They may be able to use that to draw with in their work. If you can help somebody be more still and allow their body to not move in fight and flight and freeze, you can help somebody. So just the pure craft of it, the conditioning of it, helps people to work under pressure and dive in more deeply into the imaginative event.
I remember doing this one activity when...
Oh, Lord.
No, well, the idea was you had to go into this room and steal something quietly. And you didn't know if somebody was going to be in there or not be in there. And so I went into the room, and there was nobody in there. So I thought, well, I'm still going to be quiet. They're sleeping in the other room or whatever it was. And I got to the thing, and somebody was hiding, and they jumped out. And I completely collapsed on the floor. I was so scared. I got so I thought, I got this. I'm good.
Those are my favorite words. I've got this.
Yeah,
I'm good.
Yeah.
Because right after it comes the scare.
Oh my! And I collapsed in this guy's arms. He jumped out, or he grabbed me, and I was like, ah! And it was a couple of hours after that I was like really shaken because I was so it scared the shit out of me.
It was freaking real. You couldn't fake it.
Yeah.
Look, you can sometimes spend your whole life for one moment like that.
Oh.
Just one moment like that of something that's real, and it's that wildly real, like you said, you can't shake it.
I couldn't. And even the guy came up to me, he goes, "Man, you just collapsed."
Yeah. I would have loved to have seen that.
I was like, I think I died.
You probably did. And I think that for a lot of people, that's what class feels like every single time they show up. The soul enlightening truth of it, the revealing of it, the wildness of how your body and your imagination doesn't know the difference.
Mm-hmm.
You were literally shaken after that.
Yes.
Because you went through it. And that's what's wild. So, you know, I don't think we're rocket science, but I do think we have such a noble pursuit, and we're so necessary, you know, for the culture.
Let me ask you this question.
Uh-oh.
Personality-wise, emotionally, how have you personally opened up? I know it's an opening because you're very light and fun, and I'm doing this with my arm in a big circle.
Right. Of my lightness and my fun.
Yeah.
And my,
were you always like that, or were you?
I think that's you're getting the most comfortable me. I enjoy being light and fun, but learning how to discipline, not just only for myself, but now for other folk, has been a different level of leadership, which has called for more sacrifice, more shaping, more. So I learned that from my training, my acting, but especially I think from my teaching, which has been good. And I have a long way to go, but that's the stuff you need. Grit, as my mother always said. My mother always said, "You don't have enough grit." I mean, my whole life. You don't have enough grit.
That's a great word. Nobody uses it anymore.
So good.
Yeah.
And I would look it up and be like, "You're right. I don't have it. I have other things, but I'm not sure I have that." But I think that's what she has it. My father had it. Most of the people I'm surrounded by have it. But I think that's the thing I'm learning: grit, a stick-to-itiveness, what happens when you're anxious and perfectionistic for no reason. What happens if you are as afraid of success as you are failure? And so I think teaching just gives me this awful platform to trap my students and try to teach them the things that I don't have and watch them soar if they can get some of those things in them, and then try to lift up all the stuff they already got.
Yeah.
So it's not easy for me, and that's probably very good, because it's always putting me in a sense of challenge and growth and learning. So I feel a little empathy for my students, but I want to whiplash them. And I never knew you'd feel that way. I never knew that this kind of coaching, you are so like engaged in wanting your people to grow. I didn't know that.
That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's draining. I too also sometimes I would think, I would assume students would get angry with you sometime in the moment. Not
absolutely.
Not by the end of the class. Maybe,
absolutely. And I don't know, really, of course, as a teacher, you have to understand it's really not about you at all. It's about how you can serve them. And I'm not even sure they're really angry at you. I think it's just anytime we're put in a situation that's going to grow us, I get angry too. But it's more the situation, which is where you get the breakthrough. Without that bit of pressure, you don't go beyond a comfort zone. And of course, whenever you're about to go beyond a comfort zone, unless you're consciously willing, there's going to be a little friction. And that's where the grit is.
Yeah.
And this is the arts. So like you say, there's not, what is the big repercussion, really? But of course, it can feel like heck in the moment.
Well, there's two pieces of it. One is vulnerability is very frightening. Mm-hmm. At least it is for me.
Mm-hmm. Me too.
I feel like if I'm vulnerable and something happens, if I take it all the way, I'll be destroyed. That's what it feels like.
Yeah, that's the end to me, and I'll never back. Well, I think mine is I don't know. I'll want to disappear, or I won't bounce back. Like you were talking about, you fell into that guy's arms. It's like there's no control there. And what will people think, or what will I think of myself? All of that stuff is fascinating. And when you get a little freedom of like, well, who cares what they think? Yeah. If it's authentic and I'm not intending ill. And of course, you can play a character that may indeed intend ill, but they never think they do. They're always doing it because they think it's the best way to get what they want.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating and human.
And they deserve to do this because of the things that happened in their life prior.
That's right. Or they need it for whatever reason, and that's fascinating. So all of that vulnerability, you know, Brene Brown.
I do.
We talk about her so
Yes.
much and her great work. I mean, that's the other thing about teaching that I should have known and just didn't. You just get to put everything in your life together. And that's really, I think, what I love. And you get to do that with art. Everything in your life you get to use. You know?
Yes.
That's amazing. Every failure, every success, every new piece of information, every relationship. I mean, you as a writer, you as a stand-up, you get to put it into something or possibly put it into something.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild.
That's why I like writing, because you're God creating a universe and making everybody do what you want them to do.
I just love that you're that honest to say that. I don't know why that strikes me as something
really?
I would try to clean that up in
Oh,
my
really?
diplomacy. I'd be like, well, I'm creating a world that other people can thrive. You're like, no, I'm God in this world. I like that.
Well, it's completely, it's self-indulgent, but also you're trying to mine something that's
Yeah.
universal for people to grab onto.
That's it. And what you really are, in the analogy of being God in that world, is that you're hoping you're creating something that bears fruit.
And here's another thing that I think, which who cares, right? But
Why not? It's your podcast.
it is. If you're doing it correctly or at the highest level with all the characters,
Yeah.
you're empathetic.
Yes.
And that is a pretty positive quality. In order to, I guess, do anything with art is to be empathetic with the thing that you're trying to get across, because that's the way it's going to get across to other people.
Yes. I mean, how are you going to hit? How are you going to penetrate? How are you going to transform? How are you going to spontaneously have somebody just crack up? You can't fake. Laughter is some of the best, which is why I love comedy, because you can't really fake a laugh and those kind of things. You either get the laugh or you don't. Yeah. How do people get to release some pain through tears if you're not willing to go to a spot that is true, albeit raw, but true? But that takes a lot of bravery, and it takes a lot of empathy, and you love people more in the arts. See, that's what I love. And that's why I think we fail a little in education, dropping all of the artistic programs. No, people need to be playing an instrument, in a play, painting, sculpting. That's my
equal, if not more important, in my opinion, than math.
I think
math is good though.
Well, but weren't we talking about this? It's all the same thing. Like when I look at acting, I see equations and forms and intersections. It's like, but it all goes together. You can't. For me, they're all parts of the body: science and math and the arts. And if you knock out one, you're knocking out something that's valuable in our spirit and our understanding, our intellect, our creativity, our wildness. You're missing something.
Yeah, when you read about people like Einstein and Tesla, they would have these flights of fancy and come up with these things, not by working stuff. I mean, they would do it later, working things out on paper, but it wasn't like they were doing a math problem and it came to them. They would just dream these
there
things
we go.
And tap into that intuitive part of their minds, and that's where the stuff came from.
That's just what I'm interested in. I'm interested in so many things, but I'm a dream. I'm an intuitive. I'm just fascinated by that world and the spiritual world, because of course all that for me goes together as well. It's a service art. It's a ministry, anything that you get the opportunity to do that you would like to do to mastery. To me, that becomes a whole, event.
And do you guys do plays at your school?
No, primarily, our students will go off very often, and we're thrilled that they do, and do their own thing, because that's something you've really got to do in this industry now. If you're talking about change, you've got to really be almost aggressively participatory in the building of your own career. You have to outwork, I think, your agents and managers. You have to, as D.W. Brown said, you got to be seen and be good. As Joanne says, you got to be dazzling every time, and you have to be innovating. So I think folks now, they got to put up plays. They got to shoot stuff on YouTube. The Duplass brothers, who are directors, of course, they're always saying, come on, you got an iPhone. If anything is coming from this technology, you can make some bad films at first on your phone, but you can learn. You've got accessibility to so much of technology. So they got to get out there and have that grit and that chutzpah and just start to make their own until their own begin to find them and their craft begins to put them in a position where they can do more.
Yeah, it seems more like that now than ever, which is, and also access to that type of basic equipment is really, your phone is real. That's true. I guess there's been a couple of features shot on
Soderbergh did. Didn't he say he was only going to shoot on an iPhone?
Yeah.
From now on. Of course, it's Steven Soderbergh. But and then you see, I saw a picture of him with like just seemed like 5 people on his crew. I don't know how many people he has on a crew shooting on an iPhone, but that's interesting. That means that it's not impossible for someone to begin to hone their craft.
Really young people who grew up with technology and the iPhones and all that would be so a part of that, and also would lend itself to the material that they would be doing anyway.
You asked me what has the shift been over the years. Well, nobody ever had Uber or Lyft or an iPhone in an improvisation. So I see these things, that have shifted.
I have to say that taking those classes was a transformational thing for me. It opened me up. I have a tendency to be really tight and up in my head all the time.
No.
Well, it's things, I've improved myself over the years.
It was, I know we throw around this word like transformational and so on and so forth, but it was that for me. It was just an amazing experience. And to see it from the other side, to see how great it is for people's lives. I really, my love is film, acting, the arts, stage, theater, all of that. But I think my deeper love is watching people just open up. Watching them feel like they can go after what they want. Watching people come into a class and wanting to act and then finding that they could write or that they could direct or that they could be in the wardrobe department, or they could find a job like locations that people don't talk about but make the whole industry run.
Mm-hmm.
It's fascinating to see how many places you can be of such creative viability in our industry. And people just don't even know about those jobs. So if you come in it through acting and you get a little bit more confidence and you're more empathetic and you're more imaginative, that's going to help your acting, but who knows how it's going to expand into your life. Maybe you communicate better in your relationship. Maybe you're better with your coworkers. Maybe you find that you want to share what you learn and you end up teaching. Who knows? Mm-hmm. So that's a pretty great thing.
I think, like, the main thing I was just thinking when you were talking, like, what did it really give me other than, some great techniques to do that? But what it did was give me permission to be more human.
Yes.
That's really what it was, how valuable it was to me.
Yes.
I was like, wow, I can actually do this and nothing bad happens.
No. And I can kind of rewire myself back to my open-hearted ease. That's something. To like actually be able to be with a person and not be frightened of them. Can you imagine if everybody in the world did it? Not just for fame and glory. That's lovely. I'd love to see it. Mm-hmm. For everybody who wants it, I'd love to see it. But what does it do for all of us? So,
Maybe that should be required in schools.
That's my little soapbox. Because I think it's just so lovely. I mean, nobody would say that music isn't the heartbeat of our whole entire life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that I don't think people get the exposure to the arts. Sometimes it's expensive. Sometimes people have never gone to a concert or a play in their life. And I don't think that should be. I think it should just be as common as parks and recreation are the arts.
There's something very exciting about a live performance, no matter what it is.
Oh my God, stirring.
But walking into a theater and not knowing
Yes.
what these live people are going to do and what's going to happen is really,
I mean,
great.
Like a total ridiculous nerd, every time I walk into class, I don't know what's going to happen. I know what I'm preparing for. But I remember Sting saying years ago, because he taught, of course, before probably maybe during the beginning of the phenomenon of the police and everything else. And he always felt that he was just creating a space for the students, for what they were going to bring. And I always remember that. But sometimes I see things I've never seen before in my life, that you wish everybody could see.
Yeah.
But you realize that it's no less authentic and interesting and exciting and nay, important than if it were on Broadway or if it were in the West End.
Yes.
So if that's happening in every classroom, with kids being able to feel that, the power and energy of that, I don't think it could hurt us.
And also, when you think about starting that kind of work at a young age,
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
How much more powerful to do that before the socialization process gets too damaging. How many times, like when you were a kid, did you hear "settle down"?
Okay, well, you see my personality. I could talk people into their ears bleeding. I think I talked before I walked, for sure, and just never stopped. So how I didn't see a career talking my students' ears into bleeding, I don't know how I missed that.
Yeah, well, it's, it feels good.
It does.
Now, what about like the people you grew up with, like your friends back? Yeah. I mean, are you in touch with any of those people, or do they just think like, oh, she was somebody that didn't really ever fit here in Fort Wayne, Indiana? And
no. I think, the people in Fort Wayne are hilarious. So the people that I know from Fort Wayne are still hilarious. And the funniest people I knew, it was just too cold and perhaps a little hair too conservative for me.
Oh, yeah.
The, buckle on the Bible belt. The Klan, I think, still had a parade or walked down the center of our town in the 70s. So there was something in that I knew. Plus, I just always had a hankering for the industry. So I think they just, my best friends who I'm still in touch with for life, I think they're just happy.
Oh, that's
and they
nice.
see it. But they're also doing tremendous things where they are, and those who have moved out are doing even more tremendous things. I feel like the artist doing my thing, but my God, my friends and my family just soar.
Great. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
I remember taking this, it was a career aptitude survey or something when I was in about 8th or 9th grade. And they gave you these lists of careers, and I looked at it, and I was like, there's nothing. I said to the teacher, I go, there's nothing on here I want to do.
Yeah.
I don't even know what some of this stuff is.
Yeah.
Well, you have to pick something.
Yeah, it was nothing for me but the arts or psychology, and that's the arts.
But that wasn't even on there. It was like, I remember I picked engineer. I didn't even know what an engineer did.
My parents said that when people would ask me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I would say retired, because my grandparents were fantastic.
Right.
And they lived out here.
Right.
They lived in Altadena. And I still maintain that that's it. I wanted to be retired, because when you were retired, they seemed to be able to do everything. Like you could just do anything you wanted in the day. That's where I'm at. So I was meant to be a trust fund baby. Didn't quite get that happening. that didn't happen. But
retired is
retired is
that's
awesome.
a great Plus you can wear whatever you want. Nobody cares.
You can do pottery in the beginning of the day. You can eat chocolate and bonbons. You can travel the world. I didn't know that this took money. I didn't know that this took work. But it's just this concept of living seemed to me, and just nonstop learning anything you want. So I'm still on that kick. Yes.
Retired doesn't mean you're sitting around.
Not at all.
And just in a chair,
Not
looking
at
at a TV. It means you're doing stuff you love.
Absolutely. But a life in the arts is as close as I could ever get to it.
Well, I wish that I had studied with you also. Didn't happen.
It's not too late. It's not
I
too
guess
late.
it isn't too late.
It is
Yeah.
not too late, but that is a kind thing to say.
That would, it's always great to learn new things.
Well, I think it's Philip Seymour Hoffman said, study with everybody that you can. I'm happy to have my students. They're a love, but I know that I'm not going to be their only teacher. I just hope that I'm one of the folks who can give them the confidence through being competent.
Mm-hmm.
One of my colleagues, Tom Patton, says, to say to somebody that you're competent is actually quite a compliment.
Yeah. I'll have to come by and watch a class at least.
Well, you have to come back and you have to participate. See, that's our thing. You can't just be in there watching people collapsing in somebody else's arms.
One of the things that happened to me as a stand-up and even in, the little bit of acting that I did was when I would leave that situation, whether I did good or bad, I told you this earlier, I couldn't shut my mind off. It was just going. I would be reliving it, and I'd be thinking what I could have done differently, or I'd be reveling in it if it went really well, or beating myself up if it was, I should have done this. And that's part of the reason I actually stopped doing stand-up was that there was an after piece of it that was unpleasant to me sometimes, not always. Sometimes I'd be on a real high from it, but I also would be like I can't sleep. I don't know what that is about arts and things like that.
I could totally, because we're sensitive people, and what other issues we bring into our creativity, I think they can be made greater. And then we got to learn you got to have these rituals to figure it out, because I have the same thing that happens. And I was telling you, it probably happens even more in my teaching, that it's constant. I don't know if it ever stops. I don't know if I'm ever not thinking about how things tie together and what the next thing is that I'm going to communicate and how it's going to be and if that went well or how I could have done it better. And I don't know. That's just part of the arts. That's part of putting yourself out there for certain personalities.
I just had a thought that you're very alive when you're doing that.
Yeah.
And then my next thought was, am I trying to deaden myself and not participate in life fully? And then I got really embarrassed inside. This is what just happened as we're talking. I'm like, am I somebody that's like afraid to really be living and fully, taking the consequences of those chances?
Well, welcome to humanity.
And I'm like, wait a minute, because I start to think as I get older, what do I want the most? And it's like a peaceful life, but I still want to be alive. I still want to do stuff.
But I feel that too. Like I have probably said more words than any human being in life. Okay, really, could I just shut up? And there's something that I yearn for that. I couldn't wait to get out of a smaller town. Could not wait. Now I'm yearning for a different piece. But I don't think that means that we're deadening.
Okay.
I think it just means that we are growing in other ways, and we're still going to be prone to taking risks. I mean, nobody can take every single risk that they can think of. We can just try to keep pushing ourselves. Things get scary if you don't try them. But that's what fear does to you. It tells you, I'm too silly. I can't figure it out. I need somebody to give me an answer. If I fail, I'm going to look bad. La, 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 la. And it stops you right there. So I'm very familiar with anxiety, fear, and feeling stopped. And so I'm also familiar with ease and freedom and, lightly taking risks. But they're right there together. Right. I wish that other one would just drop off, right?
It's
but
just
I haven't
survival
been able,
stuff or something. I don't know. It's like primal kind of survival of like be aware because, a tiger's going to eat you.
Exactly. And that's what we talk about so much in the work. It's like all that fight and flight. There's no tiger, but we're designed to feel that. And now it's attached to our emotions. We're upside down. I always think we're upside down.
Yes.
We're supposed to be living from the heart. And the mind is just like our collating computer. But somewhere along the line, we gave over all the power to the brain. And it doesn't know what to do with it. That's not its job. You know? So we're constantly trying to get back into the heart and the gut and the instinct and the intuition. But it ain't always easy.
Heart, gut, instinct, and intuition.
Yes.
Listeners. Podcast listeners.
Just do that.
Just do it.
And listen, maybe. Like maybe if you listen without trying to fix, without trying to figure out what your next thought is, you might create a little space.
That is a task.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think most people, myself included, much of the time when someone else is talking, this is why this podcast is good for me, because I really have to listen.
Yeah.
But plus I have to ask questions, so I'm loading up the next thing in my brain as the other person is. So I'm not always taking it in completely.
Yeah, but if you're already loaded up with questions that you know that you can go back to, you can be present. And then you might find a new direction that you want to go. You have to improvise when you're interviewing.
Absolutely.
So something of interest comes up to you, and then you got to, go with it.
Yes.
And you've already got stuff loaded up, so if things get too wonky, you can get it back on track and,
That's another one of my favorite words, wonky.
Wonky.
Grit and wonk.
Grit and wonk. The Midwestern in me, grit and wonk.
Attorneys at law, grit and wonk. Have you been injured in a car accident or a collision?
Maybe it's not too late for us to do the old school cops, grit and wonk. They're retired.
They've been called out of retirement to solve one last case. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen, for Grit and Wonk.
Grit and Wonk. That's it. We'll do it. We're here, Netflix. Find us.
Thank you, ELAINE Williams.
Oh, my goodness. Thank you, Bob. This is like amazing.
Yes, plug your studio again so everybody knows where to go when they want to learn how to act.
We are here in Santa Monica. It is the Joanne Barron D.W. Brown Studio, run by those two major talents with my colleagues who are absolutely amazing and senior to me in learning and understanding and the instruction and teaching and direction of this fine work.
I agree. It's fine work.
Yeah, it's a legacy and it's something. Come join us.
Big thanks to ELAINE Williams. I enjoyed that interview immensely. Boy, she's a delightful person. Wow. Anyway, thanks so much to you folks for listening to the podcast, The Exploding Human. This is Bob Nickman, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.